creates questions the human mind cannot answer. Out of reach, past all we can see, hear, and touch, beyond all we understand, lies the extraordinary. The extraordinary is the ghost that walks the halls of this historic home in the city of Adelaide.
All the light globes exploded and 2 paintings just came flying off the wall, and he just collapsed at the foot of the stairs. He just fainted.
What I do know is that I got myself out of the house, started my car up, and I went back home.
Those who have seen the vision say she's a young girl. Few people will enter the house, and those who do, never after dark. It is the chilling prediction of death, written by Luis Donaldo Colosio, the man handpicked to become the next leader of Mexico.
Think of this marvelous place where there is no death, and where I am near the inexhaustible source of happiness and love. If you truly love me, cry no more for me. I am at peace.
His vision came true. Colosio was gunned down in cold blood. The extraordinary is the day actor Roger Moore left his body and floated above a soundstage in Hollywood.
And I have to hold my breath. And the director, David Miller, got Ave Maria playing. And I swear I left my body. And I went up above stage 12, and I was right above all the sound stages at MGM. I was up there in the clouds looking down.
It is the chilling vision that woke a mother in the middle of the night. Her son was fighting on the other side of the world, and she had seen him die.
I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, there's something wrong with your brother. She said, my head is aching. And she said, the watch that we gave him for his 21st birthday, she said, it's on a string and it's laying shattered on the ground.
A frightening series of images that proved dreams do come true. The extraordinary is this woman's dream about one of the world's great horse races, the Melbourne Cup.
Vintage Crop in the front. Vintage Crop will win the Melbourne Cup. Vintage Crop is first. Payaka Nick is second, I think, just ahead of Mike Pator.
He was just sort of screaming at me and saying, you did it, you did it.
Vintage followed by Frontier Boy. Back behind them is Cameron.
When we'd won, Scotty said, oh, we might be able to have enough money for a deposit now. We thought, maybe a few hundred. Then, when Scotty said that, he rang his mum and his mum said, oh, it's going to be a big payout.
She knew the winning numbers before the race and won a fortune. Just some of the stories that lie beyond our normal understanding. Tonight on The Extraordinary.
We'll have more on that amazing dream later. Good evening, I'm Warwick Moss. At first glance, it looks like a beautiful turn-of-the-century home. Built by master craftsmen, it's an architectural masterpiece and dominates its surrounds. During the day, this home in the city of Adelaide looks like any other imposing two-story building. But after dark, everything changes. There's a ghost on the property, and it scares the new owner so much, he won't spend the night there.
There's got to be a way you can get rid of ghosts. Priests, parapsychologists, there's got to be a way.
If there is a way, Tony Sirianos has yet to find it. He's tried the church, he's tried a clairvoyant, but still, it seems, the ghost of Mendelssohn haunts its historic hallways. Mendelssohn is a part of Adelaide's history, a part of the city's architectural heritage. And when it comes to cold, hard dollars and cents, it's said to be in the real estate top 10. Even from the outside, you can sense the opulence, the elegance of years gone by.
But inside, it's a different story. Windows go up and down on their own. Cupboards open and shut for no reason. And one room is always bitterly cold.
For more than 60 years, there have been rumours of a ghostly presence in this stately home. A young woman who wanders through Mendelssohn late at night and early in the morning. A young woman, pale and ill, who seems to have a tenacious attachment to one particular room, the Blue Room.
She's meant to be between 15 and 20. She's probably medium height to tall. She wears a very old-fashioned nightdress. It's got like a frilly collar, and she's got like, you know, you can see sort of shoulder-length hair.
Peter Kirshner grew up at Mendelssohn. It was a childhood filled with ghost stories. Stories of a benevolent ghost in residence, a ghost her mother treated almost as one of the family. But as a child, Peter was not so sure.
I'd never walk past the Blue Room. I'd always run past because I'd always feel a cold breeze. And I thought, oh, if there is a ghost there, I don't want it to get me.
However, childlike curiosity overcame those childish fears. The lure of the unknown, the forbidden, tempted Peter and a friend to investigate.
One day we walked in there and we could both smell a really foul smell. It was awful. My friend and I sort of got nervous and we ran out, and then we were interested in, you know, what it might have been, and we went back and there was no smell, nothing. Then we were both sort of stunned for the rest of the day, wondering, you know, what was that?
That could have been the ghost of Mendelssohn, the young girl in the nightgown, the presence who loved the Blue Room, who loved the Blue Room the way it was, and who resisted any attempt to change it.
When she first redecorated it, doors would slam, cupboards would open and shut, the window would go up and down, lights would go on and off. She had nothing but problems, and the bad smell and a very cold breeze in the room, that sort of thing. But as soon as she redecorated it and locked it up back to how it originally was, it was fine. But she didn't let anyone in there for a very long time.
Peter Kirshner and her mother weren't the only members of the family who felt the wrath of this spirit, this presence. Early one morning, Peter's brother Jacob came home from a party, and
he just got to the foot of the stairs out there, and just as he was about to turn the light on, the lights just came on by themselves, and it was like chandeliers. All the light globes exploded and two paintings just came flying off the wall, and he just collapsed at the foot of the stairs. He just fainted.
When I walked through the door of this house, I knew there and then that this had to be mine.
Enter Adelaide businessman Tony Sirianos. At 23, he's what they call a high flyer, a young man who's mapped out his destiny. And that destiny includes Mendelssohn, ghost or no ghost.
And the ghost has been here ever since 1929.
In October 1993, Tony Sirianos achieved his dream. The historic $1 million mansion was his. But he was ever mindful of the fact that someone else, someone unseen, might also consider Mendelssohn home. So Tony asked a Greek Orthodox priest to bless the building and exorcise the ghost.
As he went around the house, he was saying his prayers, and he went to every single individual room, after about an hour and a half, when the blessing was completed, he was very confident that the ghost was gone and sent back to where he came from.
But strange things still happened in these halls. Tradesmen renovating the place began to get nervous. One of them was terrified.
He got so cold, it was just unexplainable. And he got all his tools, went down the staircase and said, never again. I'm not doing any more work in this house again.
Nevertheless, Tony Sirianos was fascinated. His priest had told him the house was safe, but still, there was that chill in the Blue Room and the unexplained events. So, Tony decided he had to find out for himself.
It was about just after 10. I just started getting a bit scary at the time. I just felt a bit of coldness about the situation. I just started feeling a bit cold. There was a slight drop in the temperature, and it might have been my imagination. I don't know, but what I do know is that I got myself out of the house, started my car up, and I went back home. I'm very frightened of things like that, see? I wouldn't like to see a ghost or anything like that in my lifetime, no. No. Me and the ghost don't relate together, do you know what I mean?
So, is there a ghost? And if there is, who is it? One of Adelaide's foremost clairvoyants agreed to visit Mendelssohn late at night. She wasn't told much about the history of the house, but almost immediately she began to feel that she was not alone.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes, I think this is where you slept. This is where you slept. Yes. I'm getting the name of Naomi. Or Nola. Nola or Naomi. I feel that Naomi and Nola have been names that you've used in the past or used in your lifetime. I just feel that she's going to go. I feel that she's going to leave Tony and the people who bought the house. I feel she's realising she's done enough. She's been here long enough. She's working her way down from upstairs down to here, and I think she's going to go.
But did she? That question still plagues Tony Sirianos, his family and his friends. One of them, Erwin Lawrence, conducted some experiments of his own.
In the Blue Room, I felt a coldness, a dramatic fall of temperature. I also checked to see if there was any windows that were open, see if there was a cool draft coming through. There was nothing like that at all.
And finally, there was this photograph, taken by Erwin Lawrence on April the 15th this year at Mendelssohn. An upper window, a partly drawn blind, and there in the right-hand corner, is it the face, the body of a young woman? Perhaps it's nothing, but it did remind us of a recollection from Peter Kirshner's childhood at Mendelssohn, a recollection with an eerie similarity.
I'd almost feel like a cold chill, and I used to look up the window of my mother's bedroom, and my friend said she saw the figure of a man, and I used to think that I'd see a figure of a girl, like a young girl, just like sort of looking around the side of the curtain, just sort of standing there.
The recently assassinated Mexican presidential candidate, Luis Donaldo Colosio, made headlines around the world. His death was a shock. No one thought the hand-picked successor to the nation's top job could possibly meet such a fate. But it appears one person did, Colosio himself. Days before his death, he was sitting on a plane when he wrote a prophetic poem to his wife, telling her not to worry about his departure, from this earth.
They were the shots that sent a nation into mourning and a presidential race into chaos. Colosio had earlier, on the morning of March the 23rd, flown to the border city of Tijuana from Mexico City to continue his pacifist campaign among the poorest of an impoverished nation. This story is not just about the murder of 44-year-old Luis Colosio or about the millions who still mourn him. It is about something that happened aboard his plane to Tijuana, something Colosio wrote on a sheet of paper, something as mysterious as any story we've heard on this program. To understand better, it might be helpful to know just how spiritual was Colosio's connection to the poor of Mexico, to his wife Diana Laura, and to his sense of destiny. The aura he left among his millions of mourners might also help. The scenes at his funeral were extraordinary, as though the people's very lives were being taken away from them in a hearse. They couldn't accept his death.
We need justice. We need somebody to do something. We want Colosio back.
I heard the first shot. I just turned my eye from tried to identify where the shooting was, and then I saw the gun. After that, I saw him was falling down on the floor. And I saw when the shot into his head and just blooding all his head.
From all over the country, day after day, wreaths arrived as Mexico tried to get over the loss and grasp a future without Luis Colosio, rancher's son, friend of the poor.
Sentimos caro chayo.
Yet there was one person in Mexico to whom death came as no shock at all. For during his plane trip to Tijuana, the morning of March the 23rd, Luis Colosio took out a pen and a sheet of paper, and he wrote this love poem to his wife, Diana Laura. It is a 20-line poem written in Spanish, just 2 hours before his assassination. It is titled, Think of Me. If you love me, do not cry. If you know the unfathomable mystery of the heaven where I find myself, you would never cry for me. We loved each other eternally in life, but everything then was fleeting and limited. Think of this marvelous place where there is no death, and where I am near the inexhaustible source of happiness and love. If you truly love me, cry no more for me. I am at peace.
Roger Moore won fame as the Saint on television and hit superstardom with his role as James Bond. But Roger is not just about Hollywood effects, gadgets, and exploding sports cars. Inside, he really is a quiet man who thinks about a lot of things beyond the norm. Getting to the private thoughts of Roger Moore can be as difficult as extracting one of Her Majesty's government secrets from James Bond. He's had a lot of practice at staying tight-lipped. For years as the Saint on TV, and then as 007 in Live and Let Die, Man with the Golden Gun, The Spy Who Loved Me, For Your Eyes Only, Octopussy, and his final assignment, A View to a Kill.
You see, what you find out about me is that I am very private, and I always find it very difficult to talk about myself. Much rather talk about other things. Pulling things out of me is like trying to get one of my non-existent wisdom teeth out.
As a result, it's a rare occasion that Moore will sit down with anyone to talk personally. He's a private man, father of 3, and married to the same woman, Louisa, for 30 years. Though with all that, there are touches of the Bond lifestyle. He winters in Gstaad, Switzerland, summers in the south of France, and spends a few months each year hanging around his Beverly Hills home. For the past 5 years, though, he's abandoned the grand life to take no-frills volunteer trips to the impoverished regions of Central and South America for UNICEF.
As 007 and the Saint, I was always on a mission of some sort. But they were make-believe. My real mission is to help the world's children in UNICEF. You experience all sorts of things, all sorts of emotions. Deep anger, deep rage when you see the brutality that children suffer at the hands of man, not at the hands of God. You know, to see children limbless because of grenades and mines and civil war. To see children blinded or dying from starvation, malnutrition, and from ignorance. And at the same time, elation when you see that there are so many people around the world trying to do good, trying to help.
The trips also jolt him back to reality and put Hollywood in perspective.
We've become so insular, you know, we're all in this town in particular. You know, I'm lucky I get out of it. When you come back, you realize that all they do is live and breathe being here. You know, they've all got to go to Morton's on Monday night. They have to have the tables and be seen. They live and breathe. I think it's rather good, actually, that some of Hollywood has moved out, you know, and I think a lot more is going to move out when the insurance rates go up because a lamp in an earthquake might drop on Warren Beatty's head.
Roger grew up in a different world. The only son of a London policeman, he ended up in acting, but the review for his first starring role was not one for the scrapbook.
It was a picture called Diane. It was my first starring role opposite Lana Turner. And I played Henry II of France, and she played Diane de Poitiers. And it said, and the review said that, I think even in Time and Newsweek, that Lana Turner, as Diane de Poitiers, came on to the clattering of high heels and fluttering of false eyelashes, followed by a lump of English roast beef.
A few million women would later find it hard to imagine this man as a lump of beef. 007's toughness, however, did belie a distinct fear of heights.
But I can look out of an airplane window, that doesn't worry me. It's when you're actually sort of standing on the edge of something. I don't like sort of high balconies. And in the films I've done where I've had to be sort of perched on the edge of things or climbing up rocks, I usually start off the day with sucking a couple of Valiums like polo mints and having a few shots of beer.
Good way to start a morning.
It certainly is when you're going to hang on the side of a mountain.
Not that Moore is against taking a few risks. In The Spy Who Loves Me, it was his idea to sit in a chair that was about to blow up.
When you walk into a film studio, you can tell the special effects man because he's got hands like this. You see, he's blown his fingers off. And they sit with a sort of rather primitive lump of wood with nails in, and they run a wire down which is contacted to all the charges, everything goes boom, 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 and blows up. And he was sort of rather anxious that the effect would take place while I was still on the screen. Or he thought that I might anticipate getting out of the chair. He blew it up before I got out of it. Blew me out of the chair and blew 4 holes in my rear end, where most people have 1.
Are you afraid of death?
Some days, and sometimes not. Sometimes I'm very philosophical about it and sort of say, oh yeah, it's all going to be wonderful.
What do you think happens to us when we die?
We get buried or we get burnt. What happens to our souls? I like to think that something goes somewhere beyond just being a memory in other people's minds.
And outer space?
I'm quite sure that there probably is another planet which is a mirror of this. And that may be our soulmate there. There may be another planet that's getting it right. Yeah, I'm quite sure that there is life in outer space.
As James Bond, he seemed to have more lives than a cat, and once he may have had a glimpse of the next one.
Funny enough, I did have a weird experience. No. Brought it up in that same film with Lana Turner. At the end of the film, I'm killed. And being a king, I lie in state. And then Lana Turner comes in, and I have to hold my breath. I hold my breath, and the director, David Benner, had got Ave Maria playing. And I swear I left my body. And I went up above stage 12, and I was right above all the sound stages at MGM. And I was up there in the clouds looking down.
There can be nothing more unsettling than waiting for a loved one to come home from war. The uncertainty, the all too real dangers of combat. For months, years at a time, no contact with those fighting in the trenches. But there are reports of people who say they made contact with soldiers on the other side of the world. Too many cases to dismiss. Sadly, many are frightening. A gold watch, the gift that celebrated the day a boy became a man. A loving mother, the terrifying nightmare that was to be a portent of tragedy. And a young life, the soldier defending his country against the enemy. All of them shattered by a sniper's bullet in the dying days of World War II.
You don't forget things like that.
Eat everything?
I will.
Elva Greenwood remembers well the day her brother Jack went off to war. It was a day of sadness, tinged with patriotism and hope, in their home at Maitland near Newcastle in New South Wales. One of thousands, 20-year-old Jack Ransom was ready to do his duty. But Pearl Ransom was racked by a mother's fear. The fear that her son might be snatched from her forever. Jack Ransom celebrated his 21st birthday fighting the Japanese in the jungles of the Pacific. But his family's thoughts and love were with him. His present, a reminder of that love, was a gold watch with a gold band. By July 1945, Jack had been at war for 4 long years. He'd been promoted to corporal with the 23rd Infantry. The war in Europe was over, and even in the Pacific, there was a glimmer of hope on the battle-scarred horizon. A letter that month from Jack in Borneo to his sister Elva tells the story.
I don't know if you've noticed in the papers about all organised resistance on Tarakan ceasing. Well, that is right. There's only mopping up to be done, so that should please Mum considerably.
Back home in Maitland, the Ransoms were overjoyed. A heavy load had been lifted from their lives. So, on the night of July the 6th, 1945, Elva and her mother went to bed with a new confidence. A confidence that the war was all but over, that Jack would be returned to them safely.
I was asleep in my bed and I heard this screaming and I woke up and my mother was screaming around the house, holding her head. Oh, the pain, she was saying. Your brother.
That night in July 1945 was almost 50 years ago. But for Elva, it may just as well have been yesterday. Her mother's anguish still echoes in her ears, and her mother's dream still lingers in her mind. It was a dream
that would be the beginning of a real-life nightmare for the Ransom family.
I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, there's something wrong with your brother. She said, my head is aching. And she said, the watch that we gave him for his 21st birthday, she said, it's on a string and it's laying shattered on the ground.
For 3 days and 3 nights, she waited and fretted, convinced that her Jack had fallen in the Borneo jungle. The dreaded telegram arrived on the 10th of July 1945. It informed the family that Jack had been killed in action just 4 days earlier, on the 6th of July, the exact date that Elva's mother had that disturbing dream. A single sheet of paper, a short message in pencil, but enough to confirm a mother's worst fears and break her heart. Just a name, rank, serial number, date of death, and the Army's profound sympathy. Nothing more. No clues about Pearl's dream. The shattered gold watch on a string. The riddle of the dream nagged Elva and her mother for months. The war was over, and still there was no answer. There wouldn't be until the 23rd Infantry, Jack Ransom's unit, returned home. That was when Jack's death was explained, and so was the dream.
When the boys finally came home, my brother Sergeant, who was my brother's best friend, he came to see my mother and he had a box. And in the box he took out his stripes, his colour patches, and he said, Mrs. Ransom, I've brought you these things. I'm sure you would want them. And as he was taking the things out of the box, he took out a gold band and then he took out a watch.
And there it was, the 21st birthday present, just as Pearl Ransom had seen it in her dream. The shattered gold watch on a string. The sergeant's explanation was quite simple. In the heat of the Borneo jungle, the watch band had given Jack a rash, so he'd replaced it with a string and worn the watch around his neck, close to his heart. Never was Jack parted from his fondest reminder of home, not even the day he died.
His sergeant said, there's one thing, Mrs. Ransom. Jack died instantly. There was a sniper up in the tree, shot him through the head, and as he fell, the watch was there, where he'd fallen on it.
It was then that Pearl Ransom noticed the time the watch had stopped, the time the fatal bullet struck, 11:15 p.m. The exact time she'd woken in agony on the night of July the 6th, the exact time of her dream.
She realised at that moment that that was the time he died. And the headache that she had was the pain that he had. It was contact between him and her.
Pearl Ransom went to her grave, convinced that her son, so far away, was reaching out to her that night, sending her a message of his own death. The signs were just so clear. The time, 11:15 p.m. The pain and the dream. The gold watch on a string, lying shattered in the dirt.
The hardest part of it all was that he was killed on the official day that war ended in the islands. And it was very hard when his friends were coming home and he didn't come. I don't think until she died 8 years ago that she ever got over it. They were very, very close. And if anybody else had told me a story like that, I would not have believed it. But I was there. I saw my mother. The pain she was experiencing in her head. The clutching of it. She was holding it and she was screaming. You don't forget things like that.
Horse racing is a truly international sport. There's the English Derby, the famed American Triple Crown, France's Arc de Triomphe, and Australia's Melbourne Cup. Backing the winner of a big race is every punter's dream. It's not easy. Horses don't always do as they should. Favourites get beaten. Long shots with no chance get the money. So what do you do if you dream about the result of a race before it is run? Do you back your dream or just forget it and get on with life? Susan Garland knows the answer. It's every young couple's dream to own their own home. Susan and Scotty Garland were no exception. They'd already saved around $5,000 for the deposit on a small home in the Blue Mountains west of Sydney. But it was still not enough. They needed a little more for the legal costs involved. So Susan and Scotty decided to put their heads down and work hard. And it was at work one day when Susan was talking to her workmates when
I just happened to sort of mention I had a weird dream last night, and I said I dreamt of a trifecta, and the winning numbers were 5, 6 and 10. All I remember seeing was like a guide, like the page of a form guide, but 5, 6 and 10 just stood out, so that's how I knew they were the winning numbers. They just said, why don't you put on the Melbourne Cup? That's coming up. This was on the Sunday and it was due on the Tuesday, about 9 days later.
And I thought, oh, that's a good one for the Melbourne Cup Day, because I always bet on Melbourne Cup Day, and I usually random pick with my finger. I don't look at horses' names or anything. So anyway, straight away I said, well, that's what I'm going to bet on Melbourne Cup Day.
Paula Goddard had blind faith in Susan's dream. They'd been friends for years and had worked together at the local hospital. Paula knew full well that when it came to the racing game, Susan was hardly an expert. But then again, she was even more of an amateur.
During the week, Paula would say to me, what's those numbers again? And she'd say 4, 5 and 10. I'd say, no, 5, 6 and 10, 5, 6 and 10.
The days passed. Paula had placed her bet, but Susan thought little more of her dream until she and Scotty were together on Melbourne Cup Day.
And I said, oh, I might go up and put my bet on for the Melbourne Cup now. It was about 10 to 3. And he said, oh, you won't get any parking up there now. It'll be so busy. He said, I wouldn't bother.
Susan finally managed to persuade Scotty to drive her to the TAB to place her bet. Susan knew exactly who she wanted to back. Number 5, Tiaco Nick, 6, Vintage Crop, and 10, Mercator. But she had no idea how to go about it.
I asked a man next to me, he didn't know. And I asked another man on the other side, he didn't know. So I ended up having to ask the lady behind the window, but she told me.
There's the light.
Susan and Scotty made it home just minutes before Australia's biggest race.
We were sitting there and you could hear, the commentator was yelling Vintage Crop and Tiaco Nick and Vintage Crop and Tiaco Nick, and Scotty saying, come on, come on. He looked at me halfway through the race and said, that's 2 horses. He said, 2 out of 3's not bad for a dream.
Vintage Crop is back behind them, followed by Air Pompey, who's a long way back. Tiaco Nick is being tackled by Frontier Boy in there. Well,
it was at this point
that number 10 made its break. Mercator seemed to be coming from nowhere.
And then we heard Mercator this, Mercator that, Mercator, you know, and Scotty's going, come on, and screaming.
Vintage Crop in the front. Vintage Crop will win the Melbourne Cup. Vintage Crop is first. Tayaka Nick is second, I think, just ahead of Mike Pator.
And Scotty was just sort of screaming at me and saying, you did it, you did it.
Great Vintage, followed by Frontier Boy. Back behind them is...
When we'd won, Scotty said, oh, we might be able to have enough money for a deposit now. We thought, you know, maybe a few hundred. Then, you know, when Scotty said that, he rang his mum and his mum said, oh, it's going to be a big payout. And we thought, oh, maybe a couple of thousand, you know, this will be great.
The trifecta payout then appeared on the TV screen. Susan and Scotty had won $61,867.90.
I was pretty quiet. My heart was racing, but on the outside I was really sort of calm. But Scotty, he was jumping up and down and screaming and going berserk. Just didn't believe it.
Vintage Crop will win the Melbourne Cup.
The dream of their own home had become reality, made possible by another dream. A dream of 3 numbers, 5, 6 and 10. But in their excitement, they'd completely forgotten about Paula and her bet. Paula had not even watched the race. She was, in fact, out shopping and had just bought a $2 piggy bank so she could save. Susan and Scotty sure had news for her.
I didn't believe him at all. I said, yeah, I don't need jokes like this. Don't be silly. I said, if it's true, get Michael to ring me. So they did, and he said, it's true, Paul, you really won it. And that's when I sat down and I was stunned.
Vintage Crop is first. Tayaka Nick is second, I think, just ahead of Mike Pator.
Hasn't changed my life, but it's helped a lot of people because I've got a twin brother named Paul, and he was losing his house because he had a heart attack about 12 months ago and he could only pay half payments. So I brought up the house payments, $5,000 he owed on it. So he was happy, of course. And my mum, she's got cancer. So I gave her a few thousand and she was just crying because she'd never seen so much money in her life. There's 7 kids in our family.
A simple dream of 3 numbers. A dream that netted more than $120,000 for Susan and Paula.
Totally shocked me when it happened. Like I think I was more stunned at first about dreaming the numbers than I was about winning the money.
Alice star Linda Gray was driving a car one day when through the window she saw a face, distinct and unmistakable, and had the feeling that one day that exact face would come into her life.
On the passenger's windshield, like this, like he was looking in the passenger window, and he was about 2 years old, and he looks exactly like he looks now, and his hands went like this through the windshield. I thought, oh my God, you know, what is happening? I was freaked out. And he said, happy birthday to you. And his hands went like that. And I thought, oh my God, what's happening to me?
Days later, there it was, the face she had seen on her newly born grandson. An untold story, next time.
Linda Gray. Don't miss her story. And also next time, one of the most remarkable stories you'll ever see. It's about what is known as astral projection, the ability of humans to propel themselves through space and time. For now, good night. See you in the future.
There are no limitations to astral projection, none whatsoever. You can just move just out of the body and stay in the room, or you can go to the moon.